Hello everyone, welcome back to the ObaNutrition channel. Today in this episode, I will be sharing about hypertension. What is hypertension, the typical symptoms of hypertension, and the dietary causes of hypertension. So what is hypertension? Hypertension is a condition in which the body's blood pressure is elevated with the systolic blood pressure at above 140 millimeters of mercury, while the diastolic blood pressure at above 90 millimeters of mercury. So every time you go and check your blood pressure and it's above 140 over 90, that indicates that you are having hypertension. So the symptoms of hypertension include, the first one is arrhythmias. This is an irregular heartbeat where you can have bradycardia. Bradycardia is usually a slow heartbeat, or tachycardia, a very fast heartbeat. The second one is having severe headaches, which can also result in insomnia at night, especially at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., where you have to wake up because you're feeling your head is swelling all over around. The other one is experiencing pulsations in the neck region, where you can even see a visible pulse around the jugular vein. Another one is in the ears, which can result you to having an experience of ringing actually in the ears. Another one is also in the head. The other one that can happen is you having confusion. You can find someone is not having conscience of their own surrounding. They are not stable also because of this confusion that is happening. What else can happen is having seizures or even fainting. You can also have excessive sweating. You can also experience shortness of breath. This is where whenever you want to do an intense activity, maybe you want to stand and go to the toilet, you are huffing and puffing. Maybe you just want to walk a short distance, you're also experiencing the same. You want to climb upstairs, you're experiencing the same, which is not good because it can also lead you to having fainting or even seizures at the same time. The other one is nose bleeding because the blood pressure is quite elevated, which leads to the capillaries around the nose also bursting. So, which are the dietary causes of hypertension? The first cause of hypertension is usually sugar. And sugar causes hypertension by the fact that it causes dehydration in the body cells. Whenever there's dehydration in the body cells, the kidneys are stimulated to reabsorb more salt. The reason they have to absorb more salt is because salt is essential for you to be able to get water into your cells. If you do not have salt, you'll not be able to get water inside your cells. So whenever more salt is reabsorbed is when you'll have adequate water in the cells in order to counteract the dehydration caused by sugar. That's why whenever you take a soda, quickly you'll have thirst signals because of the dehydration effect of sugar. So the problem is that whenever this is done for quite a long time, it's chronic intake of sugar. This can result in excessive reabsorption of salt at the kidneys, which now leads to elevated blood pressure. So the other way that sugar can cause hypertension is by the fact that sugar itself, whenever it's excessive in the body, it's always converted to fats which will label them as triglycerides. These triglycerides can be deposited around the blood vessels, on the cardiac muscles. Whenever they're deposited around the lumen of the blood vessels, it results in them being very narrow. That means you're going to have a very reduced space for which blood can pass through in the veins, in the arteries, and in the capillaries. That means that the blood pressure that will be there will be quite elevated. Whenever it happens around the cardiac muscles, it means the cardiac muscles themselves, they are going to have to use a lot of strength to be able to pump blood. Whenever there's more strength as an output from the heart, it can also raise your blood pressure. And this is an effect of sugar. This could be explained why we are having a high prevalence of hypertension in our age, because everyone is consuming sugar right now. It could be through soda, it could be through fruit juices, jam, taking table sugar, taking things like energy drinks, which have high sugar content in them and are not suited for your body. The second thing that is also connected to sugar that will cause hypertension is wheat. And wheat, I'll prefer to label it as tobacco to some extent. Why? Because it combines a lot of varieties with them. Just like tobacco will combine something like tar, carbon, and nicotine, wheat has a variety of factors that will cause hypertension. So the first thing that will cause you to have hypertension with wheat is that wheat has a very high glycemic index. Whenever you take white bread, your blood sugar levels will be stimulated way higher than if you were to compare that with soda. For soda, it will take a slower time for it to stimulate your blood sugar levels quite fast as compared to taking maybe a piece of cake. Because wheat is a very super carbohydrate, it's quite easily absorbed, and that means it has a higher glycemic index. So them having a high glycemic index, it means you're going to have more sugar in the blood. More sugar in the blood means more reabsorption of salt in the kidneys, and also it means more deposition of triglycerides around the blood vessels, around the cardiac muscles. Whenever you have even more salt in the blood, it also means that you're going to have elevated blood pressure. The other way that wheat can be seen as a combination of factors is that majority of wheat products are prepared with these products. The first thing that all wheat products are prepared with is sugar. I would like someone to just name for me, even in the comments, one wheat product that is not prepared with sugar. It's quite unique to find one, and this means it's not also good for your body because of that ingredient. The second ingredient that wheat will be prepared with is something we call the oils, the fats. So majority of wheat products, let's say like something like cakes, they're always prepared with something like margarine, something like cookies. They will also have some oil prepared with them. They will also have something like chapati, oil prepared with them. When you're making mandazi, you're going to deep fry them. All this will lead to more deposition of fats around your blood vessels, causing plaques, and your blood vessels are going to be very narrow, resulting in hypertension. The other ingredient is salt. So a lot of wheat products are also prepared with salt. Salt itself is not bad, but whenever it's now used excessively, it becomes a problem. Just like with sugar, whenever you have to reabsorb more salt in the body because sugar has caused dehydration, it becomes a problem. However, if you are to take salt as a standalone without wheat or sugar, it's quite better for you. So these ingredients that are prepared with wheat, fats, sugar, and salt, make it quite kind of like a tobacco. And that's why it is laughable to tell someone that brown bread is okay for them if they're hypertensive. It's not okay for them. The other thing that will cause hypertension itself is something we call trans fats. So trans fats, they include the deep fried foods, they include the hydrogenated fats like margarine, these vegetable fats that you'll find that they are in solid form, they also fall under that category. So trans fats, number one, with them they have a poor ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. That means they are pro-inflammatory. Remember, omega-3 and omega-6 are important in the body. However, omega-3 has to be higher than omega-6 in the food for them to promote anti-inflammation. Whenever it's the reverse, that omega-6 is very high and omega-3 very low, it can cause to inflammation occurring, which will essentially cause hypertension. The other thing with the trans fats themselves, they will cause deposition of plaques around the cardiac muscles, the blood vessels, resulting in a narrow lumen, and which can essentially cause now hypertension. The other thing is that majority of trans fats, they are very unstable. Let's say the polyunsaturated oils. These are very unstable oils. It means they can quickly combine with radicals in the body, and these radicals in the body, whenever they are formed, there's a lot of oxidation happening, and this can be a risk factor for you having elevated blood pressure. The other one that I would like to mention, which is the fourth one, is excessive intake of calcium supplements. A lot of people who are having things like osteopenia, osteoarthritis, all these bone conditions, they are told to take calcium supplements. However, calcium is not good whenever it's taken as a stand-alone mineral. The reason is because calcium will result in the hardening of your blood vessels. Just as like it will harden your bones, it will result now in hardening of your blood vessels. There has to be something that regulates its absorption in the body, which is usually vitamin D and magnesium. So majority of calcium supplements do not have vitamin D and magnesium, which will now result in you having hardened blood vessels, causing hypertension. The other factor, which is the fifth one, that will cause you to having hypertension is low intake of vegetables, or I will say potassium rich foods. So potassium is the nutrient that will always counteract the action of sodium in salt. Sodium is supposed to raise your blood pressure, while potassium to lower your blood pressure. However, when you are having an imbalance in these electrolytes, whenever you have very low sodium, it means you're going to have low blood pressure. Whenever you have low potassium, it means you're going to have high blood pressure. So if you want to ensure that your blood pressure remains at normal, it doesn't go too high, you have to take vegetables, because vegetables are the foods that have potassium. Or instead, you can also take foods that are rich in potassium, like green bananas, what we call matoke in our local language, or even consume something like avocados. Avocados and bananas are great sources of potassium. Even something like sweet potatoes, very great sources of potassium, which can help in reducing your blood pressure, especially if you're already hypertensive. So this last category of the causes, I would like to label them as kind of drugs, which you have something like tobacco smoking. Tobacco itself has a lot of ingredients in them that will lead to hypertension. We have something called tar, we have something called nicotine and carbon. All these will combine themselves to result in you having elevated blood pressure. The other one is alcoholism. Excessive intake of alcohol will also result in elevated triglycerides level. Elevated triglycerides level will lead to deposition of fats around the blood vessels, the cardiac muscles, narrowing the lumen of the blood vessels, resulting in fatigue in the cardiac muscles, which finally causes you to having elevated blood pressure. And these causes, all of them, they are more attributed to the modern era. A lot of people now are consuming sugar, a lot of people are consuming wheat, they are consuming trans fats, things like chips, things like bajias, all these deep fried foods. They are also not very keen on how much vegetables they are taking. They are taking low amounts of potassium. And also a lot of people, especially the elderly, are on calcium supplements, and they're taking them as a stand-alone nutrient, which is not going to be good for them in the long run. So I hope you have learned one or two things about hypertension, and you can now be able to better prevent it early and also educate someone on it. So thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.